All right, morning. Obviously, a gut-wrenching loss Saturday in Greenville. Didn't finish the game we wanted to, and that's back-to-back weeks of us not doing what we need to execute to find a way to win the football game. And we learned from it. We had good meetings yesterday, and then understand what we need to do to continue to get better and improve. This is not a group that's hanging their head down. Obviously, they're disappointed and frustrated, but not one that's going to quit. I don't think anybody watched our team out there last few weekends and says this team has given up. They certainly fight. One of the questions going into this game was, would they come out flat anyways after what occurred versus Houston? And you can certainly say that wasn't what happened. But we got to find ways to execute when it really matters. When it came down to it, it's the little things we got to continue to clean up. And that's what consistent football teams do. They do the little things right all the time throughout the course of a game to maintain consistency, and we're not there right now. And it's literally at every spot, every little position, every coach, we all got to improve, and we all know what we need to do to improve. But like a lot of the things, right, through wins and losses, you quickly learn from it, and you put it in the rearview mirror, and you keep going forward. We have obviously 25th ranked Tulane at their place, a place that's given us challenges at playing at in the past since I've been at Memphis. They're a ranked team. I believe they have the quarterback is 16th in the country in passing efficiency. I believe they have the 11th ranked defense in scoring. And so they're doing a heck of a job, and it's going to be a heck of a battle for us in conference. But we're excited about the challenge ahead and trying to find ways to get better this week and find a way to win this week.
Ryan, the second halves, you guys went from being, I believe, one of the nation's top second half scoring teams. Last two games, I think you guys have only scored, 2 touchdowns. What has changed for you, in your mind? What do you think is the difference in the second half where you guys aren't able to finish drives now that it's become a 2-week concern at this point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big things that's occurred is the turnovers, and that's one of those things that we haven't been able to do. Obviously, in the Houston game, the red zone efficiency wasn't what it needed to be. We're kicking field goals, and obviously this second half of this past game, the turnovers, caused us a lot of issues, and we just got to be able to find ways to go and finish and clean up the details. And that's one of those things you look throughout that game. We still had some drop passes. We had not as many missed assignments, but just lack of execution overall. And that's one of those things you see it, and the guys are able to do it on a Tuesday, Wednesday practice at a high level, and it's just for some reason not carrying over a consistent basis on Saturdays. And that's one of those things we got to say, okay, from a schematics, are we doing too much? Are we putting the guys in the best position? How can we continue to get things? I mean, there's such small things, Evan, as, if a guy is supposed to step with this foot first and steps with this one, gets beat across his face, maybe we're not having the conversation about things that we need to do better, and maybe it's more of a positive light. So, we constantly study things we're doing with self-scout, and there are things that change in the second half these past 2 weeks that aren't allowing to us. Exactly right. Early in the season we said, we're not starting fast. And then these past 2 weeks we are starting fast, but we're not finishing. We had been a very good fourth quarter team. So finding ways to continue to execute, and that's what it's going to come down to.
Schematically, though, you mentioned it. Like, what do you see schematically that's been different from you guys?
Not a whole lot's changed schematically. Obviously, we're playing different teams, different defenses and offenses. But, just being able to do things. The turnovers, obviously, this past game was what ultimately hurt us. But we're not changing what we do schematically a whole lot. Obviously, we're going to be smart with it and have a game plan based off what we're getting. But, just finding ways to execute at a higher level.
Brian, they were 10 of 15 in third down conversions. You had them down 30 and 8, 30 and 10, 30 and 12. They converted. Was some of that because you didn't have Quindell out there as a leader in the secondary, or what do you think the reason was?
Yeah, I think one of our, and this is no excuses, we've now played 12 different guys in our secondary. And that's the most I've ever seen in my entire career. We talked about having good depth, but when you start going into guys that hadn't even traveled that were on the field Saturday night, but that's no excuses. We've got to find a way to get everybody on the team prepared. It doesn't matter if it's our 115th guy. He's got to be ready to play football. And, obviously Quindell's a tremendous football player. And some of the things that occurred in the fourth quarter versus Houston may have been because arguably our best football player and our leader of our team wasn't out there. And, maybe some of the things that we saw, some of the post concepts and some of the stuff that they were able to attack us on, could have been due to the inexperience. But that's the players. That's our job is to coach them, put them in the right positions, and whoever's out there, right, finding ways. And so we hope we can get Quindell back as soon as we can, because we know he is a difference maker back there.
I know you dressed for the game. Was it a matter of like in warm-ups it just didn't feel right, or had it been ruled out?
Yeah, Quindell and I have a great relationship, and we knew it was going to be truly a game-time decision. And obviously the health and safety of our players is always going to be my number one concern. Him and I have a great communication along with our athletic training staff and the doctors. And at the point prior to kickoff, we just didn't think it was in the best interest for him to play. But he continued to be dialed in and all that stuff, and we hope we can get him back this week.
Going back to the execution, the last 2 weeks they're executing enough to get the big lead. Are you seeing a shift in focus after the big lead? Like why is the execution kind of switching once the lead happens?
Yeah, we always talk about, right, having detailed focus with 18 to 23-year-olds throughout the course of a game. And I think the focus there, it's not like the guys are over there goofing off. We're staying pretty dialed in. I mean, even in halftime, the locker room's pretty dialed in. The guys are, nobody's on their phones. They're just focused on the task at hand and what they need to get done. And so it's just finding ways to make sure we're staying ahead of it and be able to maintain things. And I think that's inconsistent play is what's allowed the ebbs and flows of a football game, Frank. And I think we've got to find ways that, okay, what can we do at a high level? And sometimes it's like, hey, if this thing's working, right, they're doing this to take it away, now what can our answers be? And then being able to get the guys to do it. But I do think the focus is there. The guys have been dialed in and locked in. It's just, simply put, we're not doing what we need to in all 4 quarters. And sometimes you see it in one phase and not the other, right? Hey, maybe special teams had a really good first and second quarter, but not a good third quarter, a good fourth. And it's just, is it the different units? Is it, hey, maybe it's like I said, we haven't had a ton of just blown assignments. We had a few. So that, if we were getting a ton of those, I'd say that's a lack of focus. But I think sometimes just the miscues here and there is what's adding up.
At this point, Ryan, it has been now, I believe, 4 times in the last 2 seasons you've been in this position where you've had a double-digit lead that's been blown. How do you, as a coaching staff, keep everyone not letting it get to them mentally? Because it's one thing for it to be last year and it's last year. It's happening again now. How do you guys keep everyone not letting that get to their heads? Because obviously now, if a lead happens against Tulane, perhaps focus may be lost again.
Yeah, again, you're the one that's saying focus may be lost. I don't think the focus is lost. I think it's the lack of execution and the finding ways to get it done. And reality of it is, it's, I hope we get a lead versus Tulane and find ways to keep it. And the nature of college football is being able to play a 4-quarter game, and we haven't shown that we can do that. That's where the issues are. And how we do that, we have to go out and keep focus and keep great discipline and keep great execution at a high level for everything we're doing. And it's not something that you sit there and say, okay, well, we got to change this, we got to change that, because clearly the plan's in place. But now how do we, and then maybe it's, say, as coaching staff with the things that are changing, what can we do to put our guys in better position to go out there and have success? But like I said, we'll take a lead in every game that we can and find ways to continue to maintain it and then order to execute at a higher level.
Ryan, you said after the Houston game that all of your hopes, goals, and dreams were still in front of you. After this one, is it a little bit tougher to still envision that?
No, and I think our guys still understand this conference is quite up for grabs, if anybody can say that. And we're one game at a time approach. We can't sit there and focus on the games after this. Obviously we go out there and find a way to beat Tulane. We know this conference is a tough one, and there's still a lot of games to be played. And so that's the great thing about our guys. They're determined. They're dialed in on what they need to get done. And we'll look at the standings when it's all said and done, but I think our guys firmly believe that the plan is there, right? I mean, we talked about it in the Houston game. Had we made a tackle on the 4th and 12? Had we done what we're supposed to on the onside kick? All those things go into play, right? Nobody cares about what it could have, should have. This past game, had we stepped with the correct foot on one of our plays? All those things. Had the officials maybe looked at one of the plays when I asked them to look at it. All those things go into it. Maybe it's a different story. But our guys are steadfast in their approach and their beliefs and their buy-in. And so that's a great thing. Is it's not like they're in their locker room like this. I mean, their chins are held high with an understanding of we got to find ways to improve, and so therefore all of our hopes, goals, and dreams are still in front of us. But we got to do it one day at a time.
You're obviously not far away, right? You could easily be 4-0 if it wasn't for losing those leads. You did. That's a fact, but you can't feel you're that far off, right?
Yeah, look, so I think if we had gotten blown out in the past 2 games, absolutely. I'd say, man, 1, the plan's not in place. 2, schematically, we got to make changes. And 3, maybe the personnel's not where it needs to be. I don't feel that way. I feel there are a lot of things we need to improve upon. I'm not sitting here with blind eyes saying there's not things that we got to get fixed. Absolutely. And then when you come down to it, what are those things? And there are a bunch of little things. And when you get those little things fixed, then all of a sudden you're winning the close games. And that's what good football teams do. That's what great football teams do, is find a way. And right now, we're playing very inconsistently. And so, knowing that, hey, we're there, we're on the cusp. Have we done this? We could have been there. Had we done this? We could have been there. And so learning from those things and making sure that in the next week, whatever happens, that we're finding a way to fix all those things, then play at a higher level in order to go out and get a win.
When you're dealing with 19, 20-year-olds who have suffered some close losses like that, are you concerned at all about that seeping into the psyche if you get into another close game? I guess residual effects at all?
Yeah, I think our guys are so resilient. But they won't. I always say this: sometimes they're more resilient, right? You guys said, hey, how is that Houston hangover going to happen again and allow it to, beat you again? I think our guys have been great. Like, okay, we learned from that, focus on the next one. Just like a gut-wrenching loss versus East Carolina, the way what occurred and all that stuff. So when we're in the game, I don't think any of that stuff comes up. I think the guys are just determined and saying, okay, maybe if anything, we knew what happened in the past. All right, here we go. Maybe it is a little bit more, okay, I got to execute at a higher level. I got to do this done. I've got to do this. I've got to maintain what I need to maintain and play faster and harder throughout the course of the game because the lessons they learned, right? And so maybe it's not one of those like, oh, gosh, here we go again. It's more of, all right, here we go. Now I know what I got to do done.
Do you think it's fuel more than
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the mental strength of our guys and the way they're built and the way they've practiced and the way they've learned and their beliefs and things. So I think that's more of, okay, hey, we've learned from those. Let's grow from it.
I wanted to ask you about 2 of the key situations from the game the other night, from an operational standpoint. First, the catch that probably wasn't a catch in the 4th quarter. I think it was the opposite sideline of where you were. Were people in your? Because the TV broadcast kept talking about how it was not a catch. Were people able to communicate to you at all? Like, how did that play out?
So just so you guys know, there's no coaches challenges in college football. I think that's a misconception. A lot of people think there's coaches challenges. There's no red flag. They don't put one in my pocket with a Nike logo and I get to throw it out on the field. You talk to the refs. In fact, there's multiple things that I had said, hey, let's look at that. And they're supposed to look at everything within question. In fact, they come up and say, yep, we looked at it, it was a catch. And that's how quickly they do, because they do have someone up in the booth. Now with targeting, some of the conferences actually send stuff off to different conferences, and there's actually a center. Correct. And so now all I can do is, I can't argue it, and given the situation at the time, you call timeouts. But if they said they've already looked at it, they're not going to go ever back and look at it again. So some people say, why don't you call a timeout? They're not going to re-look at it. Once they've confirmed in their earbuds, and they've got the two-way radios where they've got all confirmation to each other, and they get buzzed just like that on everything. So.
And then this double overtime play, not asking about the play calling specifically, but Cramsey, when he was here last week, was talking about how you give him a lot of freedom as a play caller, situationally. In a moment like that, where you're 3 yards from a win, how involved are you in that play call, from an operation?
Yeah, I mean, we discuss everything. One of the things about the 2-point situations, so much of it's what's the comfort level of the quarterback, and so I don't mind talking through some of those. Right, David asked me post game, hey, people are probably wondering why you hand the ball off to a running back on that. It's an RPO. It's no different than in that play. And you guys, I don't ever watch the TV copies, but if you go back and watch the coach's copy, had we executed one of our best offensive players, had he done exactly what he had done most of the game, it's a different story. It was an excellent play call. We just didn't. One of our best players didn't take the proper footwork like he had shown all game in order to do it. But it was an RPO, and they took away the pass with double coverage, and the running lane was exactly what we had seen most of the time. And we'd seen Asa shoot through on some of those 8 and 9 yard carries on some of that stuff, and unfortunately we stepped with the wrong foot, and there we are. And so and then later on the next passing play, I'll even go back to the last 2-point conversion attempt that we failed on. We didn't, one of our best players didn't run exactly what he was supposed to, and that's neither here nor there. And maybe we had a misread on things. So, things that we have practiced on, and we work on 7 2-point plays every single week in Wednesday practices, and we got a quarterback we trust and believe in. But going back to the original question, it takes everybody, right, from the quarterback to Cramsey to myself, to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we think and what we've seen in order to be able to get it done.
You said 7 2-point plays. Did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going back to the offense, how concerned are you? I know you want to talk about this receiver by committee. One, how would you assess them at this point? 2, how concerned are you in through 7 games that just now you guys just had your first 100-yard receiver in a game?
Well, because we're playing so many guys, I think that's one of the reasons why, to answer your second question, it's not a concern. We got a bunch of guys that are capable of doing it. And so because so many guys are stepping up, that's a good thing. We're not relying on one guy. I felt like I said last year, Seth would often look to Calvin Austin. If he wasn't there, then he would look, okay, is Sean Dykes there? Nope, okay, bam. The play's over. Now I think he's got the ability to trust all those different guys. My biggest concern is with the wide receivers, too many drops. The drops continue to be concerning. That's my concern there, not about the stats of 100 yards. It's the drops, and we've got to find a way to fix those because in all these close football games, we knew going into the season they're all tough, hard-fought games. If you drop the football in critical situations or at any time, it can lead to major issues. It was a tough catch for Javon above his head. We could have lowered that ball, could have been better, but it also tipped off one of our wide receivers' hands and led to a pick 6. So, I think we've got to be more consistent in our catching, and then anything that we call a contested catch, we need to go out and be able to get. We got big physical receivers that need to be able to come down with the football.
I guess going back to that, you mentioned, obviously anyone can step up in particular, but at this point, is it just because how the offense is struggling in the second half, is it concerning that maybe there's too many options instead of like, hey, here's this one reliable option we can go to, or are you comfortable with just the fact that, hey, we have multiple weapons instead of maybe that one reliable person in a close game where you can kind of turn to a little bit?
I think that a lot of our guys have stepped up and shown that they can be reliable, and I think given the you guys watching the game, obviously we had a couple of receivers go out with injury at some point during the game, so we had to have certain guys step up. So I think being able to have multiple guys that the quarterback feels comfortable with is huge. And I think being able to have a tight end and running backs that can catch, I think all those things are important. I don't want to sit there and say, hey, we've got to go to this one guy, because if they take away that one guy, then we're not doing anything. So I think being able to have multiple weapons at pass catching is huge for us and what we need to do in our passing game.
And then to follow that up a little bit more, with the multiple weapons you guys have, how much different is it now? Because obviously in the past you maybe could rely on maybe 1 or 2 that can kind of just break a big play off and just kind of do whatever. How different is it with this offense you've seen that's worked with multiple weapons that maybe don't have that, say, explosiveness, but still being able to be productive, I guess, in what you're seeing so far? Yeah,
you're right. We have had a ton of NFL-type talent around here, and I think a lot of our guys are very good players. We got very talented football players. But you're right, we have had that guy you can throw the ball to and watch him go 80 yards, and that's one of those things, and we're having to earn drives, sustained drives, right? Now, we were explosive. We had, I think, 9 explosive pass plays, which is great and gives you the opportunity to have success. I believe we punted one time, is that correct? And it was more of analytics probably told me to go for it, and we decided to do a pooch punt. So in a game like that, when you're only punting one time, you got to find ways to sustain some drives. And I think having those receivers be able to do those things, that's where the drops can occur. And we need to have more explosiveness. We got, like I said, we've talked about it before, our running backs are really solid. do we have the Darrell Henderson back there that can go 80 and make one? Maybe not, but we're working to get there where we need to be, and that's part of my job is to make sure we're finding those type of guys.
So you have multiple situations where it's a crucial moment and a player, like you said, may take the wrong step or do the wrong assignment. As a coaching staff, how do you approach it? Like, how do you combat that when it's happened, more than once in certain situations? Like, how do you address it?
You coach the heck out of these guys, and that's a great thing is these guys are all about it. Coach me. Show me what I can do better. Show me how I can get it done. It's not it's not this. No, yes, coach, that's exactly right. I got to be better. That my footwork here is not what it needs to be. You're exactly right. This route should have been 7 yards instead of 5 yards. This should have been my read. Hey, this should have been my coverage angle. And our guys are great about it. They're sitting there with notepads and bright eyes, right? Even though we got back late yesterday, taking notes on yes, got to get that fixed, got to get it fixed. And I think what's happened is, like I said, it's where we got to get it. It's not just one position, right? It's one of our best players didn't step the right way. One of our best players didn't run the exact route that we need to in critical times. And so you get those fixed, and all of a sudden it's a different story. But that's our job as coaches. But the guys have been awesome about it. There's none of this, man. Now, I challenged them in the locker room. I said, every single person start with me. Look in the mirror and find ways we got to get better. And they've been great. Their attitudes, their approach of, okay, yep, that's exactly what I need to get done. Absolutely. And the hunger and the desire to get back on the practice field's huge because a lot of these guys and coaching, it's changed, right? In 24 years of coaching, a lot of these guys, man, coach picking on me, I don't want to hear it. Everybody else, there's enough chatter out there. No, our guys are awesome. Like, okay, that's why you got to get done. Yes, I see it exactly. Yes, sir, coach. Let me go out there and get this thing fixed, and the hunger and desire to get it. And that's why I do appreciate about this group is there is that improvement. I know, right, ultimately the only thing that matters is the win. But I think our guys are taking steps in the right direction to get better.
But when it's happening, like in the critical situations versus, because like if it's a random play in the first or second quarter, it's done right. When it's happening in the critical situations, in terms of practice, does that mean to create more critical pressure in practice scenarios? Like, how do you get it to not happen in those moments?
Yeah, so in fact, it's interesting. We talk about we talked to our team about that second play of the game is just as important as that last 2-point conversion. That 18th play of the game, right, may have been, hey, you need to strain an extra half a second on the block. Is just as important as that 2-minute drive at the end, right? And so we do put our guys in a lot of critical situations. We talked about doing the 7 2-point plays every day. We do a 2-minute situation every day. In fact, on the sideline, the guys were saying, "Hey, coach, just a Wednesday practice. Here we go, 2-minute situation. What's the situation? All right, minute 4, 1 timeout. Here we go. We've been there. We practiced this. We actually practiced a very close situation to that in training camp, right? And so we're constantly putting our guys in situations, backed up situations, 4-minute situations, those different scenarios throughout the week. We're constantly putting those in our guys. So when it gets to Saturday, they've been there and done that. And finding ways to execute at a high level, that's our job as an entire unit and organization to make sure that it's occurring every single day of the week so it really shows up on Saturdays.
I don't know what his snap counts have looked like, so maybe he's playing more than people think, but did Saturday solidify that Skates needs to be more of a focal point of the offense the rest of the season?
Skates will be the first one to admit to you, like, he's got to be consistent in what he's doing. And that's what I appreciate about the young man is, he'll even tell you, he made some phenomenal catches, made some phenomenal plays. But he'll still be the first to tell you he's fumbled the ball twice. And you fumble the ball twice, it's going to be hard for people to say, especially myself, to say, yeah, go out there and be a playmaker for us. And he'll be the very first one. That's what I appreciate about him is, no, coach, I ain't going to do that again. I'm going to get this fixed. And but, yes, he has shown what he has shown is that he can be a very explosive player for us and a guy that we can rely on and we're going to continue to rely on.
Hey, Ryan, just out of curiosity, was there ever a thought of going for the 2 at the end of regulation?
So the question will probably come back like, hey, Ryan, last year, you went for 2. I think we're looking at 2 completely different kicking situations than what we had. So if you looked last year, East Carolina's kicker, who's still their kicker, was an all-conference kicker. He's had struggles this year. And you look at the game versus NC State, right? Had some blocked extra points and some stuff. So, and he had some low kicks. I was sitting there saying, man, we're very close. Obviously, the missed snap. knock on wood somewhere, our kicker's done a nice job. And so now you're looking at two completely, comparing years and years. So there wasn't, because I had great faith in what we were able to do there, so I didn't think about it. But as we know now, right, and more teams are doing that, saying you got to use your best 2-point play at some point. Do you go and throw it out there and roll the dice, And a lot of teams are doing that versus an away opponent, especially. I don't look at Vegas lines or anything like that, but if you're an underdog, some of these teams say, hey, we were a big underdog, it's an away game, we're going to go. But at that point, to answer your question, no, we were going to kick the extra point.
Coach, can you talk about Chris Howard? Because he got special team player of the week.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that, obviously we always talk about the transfer portal and what it can do and can't do. He's a guy that's just come in and bought into the way we do things. Kind of don't, like I told you guys before, I don't know how to coach kickers very well. So all his success is 100% on him. Just going out there and being, very steady with what he does and able to get it done in the PATs and field goals. And we need him to continue along. But he's, a kid that transferred from the University of Florida. Kind of like our punter. You look at our punter's one of the best in the country. Joe Doyle was a freshman All-American at Tennessee, lost his job, found an opportunity here, and is having immense success. Chris Howard's a young man that had some starts at University of Florida, lost his job, coming here and having immense success. So, especially in those specialists, it's unique to be able to see them come here and do things no different. Kobe Cox, our long snapper, right? Obviously, hopefully that's a name we don't have to talk about much because he's doing his job. But Chris has been phenomenal. We continue to have great faith and trust in him, and he's performing on the field.
Has he improved even more for you? Because I think you've extended your range on him.
Yeah, hey, when you one of those deals, right? It's you see what you see in practice, but I think sometimes the adrenaline of a game and one of those things as you've been able to see, okay, hey, all the TV broadcasts at ESPN every Thursday and the Zoom call, what's his distance, and I have noticed that I probably have added a couple yards, whether he knows that or not, I haven't told him that, but I think when you have a little bit of trust and faith and you've been able to see him do it at a high level.
Quickly on Tulane, I think last year you beat them here to get to 6-6 and go bowling. How have they improved and what is it?
I mean, you want to talk about it's a dramatic improvement now. We know they've always played at a high level, and that's what shows you what college football is all about. They've got 2 transfers starting in the secondary that had started at Power 5 programs. They've got a transfer D lineman that started at a Power 5 program, and they're just playing really solid football. I mean, they're playing, Their quarterback is now going on his 3rd year as a starter. I also think he's made tremendous jumps, right? Like I said, he's 16th in the country in passing efficiency. So you see that jump from a solid sophomore quarterback to a very, very elite junior quarterback. And so he's made one of those jumps. And what they're doing is they're tackling really well. They beat Kansas State at Kansas State. And, I think what you're doing is you're seeing a team that's being consistent. And that's what they're doing. That's one of those things. There's a reason they're 3-0 in conference. They're doing things the right way in all 3 phases. And, they've got good players, and they're well coached. And, we understand one of those teams. That's one we're going to have to play our best. And our focus will be on them, but it's still on us to continue to get better. But you talk about, it's, what they were last year compared to what they're this year. And that just shows you how college football, right, flip of a coin, it can change dramatically. And credit to them, they're doing it very, very well right now.
At this point, the more chaos in the conference there is, the better that is for Memphis. And so you were in a position where you can create that chaos against a team in Tulane and top the conference. Does that create? I know every game is urgent, but does that create more of a focus on what is still out there for you guys? Yeah,
I think that's part of it, right? I think if earlier I answered that, our goal is still in place, absolutely, and that's part of it. I think, we've been part of it where maybe the goal isn't, like last year, and we still fight to get things done because winning's so important. But I think knowing that there is still everything we want still in front of us is huge, and I think them being ranked's great. I think that's good. Very rarely do I ever talk about, hey, this team's ranked. Now this will be the 3rd team that we've played this season that has at one point been ranked in the top 25. And so that kind of just shows you the schedule. It shows you the strength of the conference. But I think that's important for our guys to understand, hey, what we're going into and the excitement that will come with it.
With Brandon, one, what's his status for this week? And two, is it related to his injuries last season?
It's day to day, and no, it's not related to his injuries last season.
It's a different injury.
Yes, sir.
What about Ducksworth? I saw Ducksworth was helped off.
Yeah, day to day as well.
Is it related in the series? Because obviously he was helped off, not just like walked off on his own power. Is it serious or?
Day to day.
Do you expect the secondary outside of Quindell? Do you expect to have guys back where you're not in such a dire situation there?
Yeah, you'd hope. I mean, it's like I said, it's good to have the depth that we've had. We've had, like I mentioned, Julian Burnett will still be out. He's a guy that started a game for us. LD Polk, we're hoping that he can come back. We knew he was a little bit of a long-term injury, but we're hoping he can start to work his way back. You guys got to see Joel Williams in there, right? You guys got to see Harold Nash in there. I'm sure some of you guys had to look down and say, who's 39, who was in the game for us. But I think, you hate to say it, right, but those guys are now getting experience, right? Josh Hastings is getting experience. Cameron Smith, right, who, at one time I played some forwards, got experience now. Obviously, you hope that experience comes in wins, but the more of that and the more depth you have that's built upon it rather than, okay, here's my first time out there, here we go, versus, opponent East Carolina offense in critical situations or at the end of a game versus Houston. But I do think we'll hopefully get some of that depth back as we continue to move on.
Quindell's not on the field. Who's calling the defense, if you will, from the secondary's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, Greg's one of those guys. Greg Rubin's one of those guys we rely on. Obviously, you don't want to corner doing it, but Greg's playing at a really high level, as we well know. But then you do have to rely on your safeties, and Josh Hastings and Cam Smith were the guys that got the majority of the reps in that game. And then when Quindell's not out there, Zay Collins is one of those guys that continues to get guys lined up. Jeff Canton had a good statistical game, but even Jeff will tell you there's some things that he's got to get cleaned up. So. But yeah, I think if we can get Quindell back, I think that will certainly make a significant increase in our productivity back there, hopefully.